What I Learned at Sourcecon, next on the Rec Tech Podcast.
Welcome to Rec Tech, the podcast where recruiting and technology intersect. Each month, you'll hear from vendors shaping the recruiting world, along with recruiters who'll tell you how they use technology to hire talent. Now, here's your host, the mad scientist of online recruiting, Chris Russell.
It's time for another edition of Rec Tech, the only podcast that helps employers and recruiters connect with more candidates through technology-inspired conversations. Today's show is a recruiter edition. This episode of Rec Tech is sponsored by HireTool, the recruiter's best friend. Here's what recruiter Michael Krause says about them. The HireTool AI tool is awesome. It saves me hours per day of sourcing by delivering to me the closest match from multiple sources. It paid for itself in the first 30 days. HireTool's AI engine is like a personal sourcing assistant that works for you 24/7. Find anyone's contacts and analytics, access to undiscovered profiles from the open web, smart search with Boolean Builder Assistant built in, great Chrome extension, good customer support. Check them out at hiretool.com. It's HireTual.com. All right, a few show notes for you before we get started. This show, reminder, is syndicated on the HR Podcasters Network. If you head over to hrpodcasters.com, you can find this show and discover over 20 more just like it. Sign up for the email alerts. You'll get notified every morning on what new shows just came out. So it's a great way to track what's going on in the podcast world, which is really growing by leaps and bounds these days. Everyone's got a podcast. And don't forget to check out my Rec Tech Live video training series. On March 29th, I'll be teaching Twitter Recruiting 101, followed by Content Marketing for Employers on April 6th. Find all shows at rectechlive.com. All right, on to our guest. Shannon Pritchett is the editor of Sourcecon. As a lifelong student in the recruitment industry, Shannon is passionate about improving it. She has a diverse background in training, sourcing, full desk recruiting, coaching, and journalism. She got her start in the recruitment industry at Vanderbilt University and later worked as a senior recruiter for internal data resources and community health systems. Social media recruitment ambassador for T-Mobile USA, director of recruiting for Moxie, trainer with Ayers, and last as a manager of global sourcing and training for Manpower Solutions RPO. And here she is. Shannon, welcome to Rec Tech.
Hey, thanks for having me. Super excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm sorry I haven't been able to get to a Sourcecon in the last few years. It's been on my to-do list, but schedule hasn't worked out. The last one I went to was Dallas, which was, what was that, 5 years ago maybe?
No, not that long. Maybe like 4.
4, okay. I think Jeremy was still running it back then, but
he was, and that's when I believe I met you for the first time.
Okay, I vaguely remember that, but awesome. That's good.
I do. It was like the highlight of my day.
Oh wow, they do have fans out there. Awesome. Well, it's great to reconnect with you. You just got back from Sourcecon Las Vegas. So first of all, tell the listeners what is Sourcecon, because some of them may not know about it already. So what is Sourcecon?
You're right. Yeah, Sourcecon is a large online publication and conference series. Our main mission is just to really help recruiters and sourcers and even sourcing leaders learn more about better ways to find and manage candidates, whether that's through our daily articles online at sourcecon.com or our conference series that we have now 3 times a year. We're happy just to share and educate as many people as we possibly can. And it's also a good online community where, of course, you can learn information, share ideas, ask questions, and just get to know and network with more people throughout the world who do exactly what you do.
Yeah, I think it really is a community, too. I think from all the different conferences out there, and there's many of them, I think Sourcecon's community is probably one of the more tight-knit ones out there, right?
I would agree. Maybe that's because I'm at the helm, but we really focus on the community feel and the community vibe. And it's the conference is planned by the community. We have an advisory group that helps make decisions. We pretty much any kind of ideas or thoughts, or we have the ways to improve the event or run the event, we put back into the community. So a lot of people, really feel like Sourcecon is part of them, and that's because it really is.
Yeah.
We put that first, and it's been a really cool position. I've had this job for about 2 years now, and Sourcecon feels like a huge piece of me, and the fact that I can do this, on a daily basis is just a dream come true.
Nice. So how was Vegas? I saw the pictures on Facebook and Twitter and stuff. Looked like a good time. What were some of the highlights for you?
I know Vegas was great. It's hard not to have a fun time in Vegas unless you're like, a real angry person. But I heard I had a blast. It was a good conference. I would say it's one of the best Sourcecons that I've attended. And I'm a pretty big critic, obviously, on them. And I was just super impressed with just how well this event came together. The speakers just knocked it out of the park, first off. We opened the conference with Jim Schneider and Brian Mork, and he had a little social engineering trick for us. The entire theme, by the way, of this conference was social engineering. So we really wanted to play that up. And we started, right off the bat with a little trick from Jim Schneider and Brian Mork, as I said. We actually had one of their friends, whose also name was Brian, go out on stage and live in front of 800 people pretend to be Brian Mork. And no one knew who Brian Mork was because he's an ethical hacker and he's in IT security. He's not in sourcing. So everyone's thinking this bald white dude on stage is supposed to be presenting, and him and Jim are going into it. And then, all of a sudden, this other bald dude comes out, also named Brian. And, they take a picture together and they're doing the show on stage, and they turn around and they have a sign that says Sourcecon. And it really just, and their presentation was called Sourcecon. Their presentation was Trust But Verify. And, they really looked at different ways that you could find candidates, online through social engineering, like how a social engineer would do it, and how the sourcer, obviously played by Jim Schneider, would identify information. And so that set a pretty good tone throughout the whole conference. We had Dean DaCosta follow. It's hands down the best presentation I've ever seen from Dean. I think really this was his niche subject. And speaking of some of the hacker tools that you can use, Dean just did a phenomenal job presenting. He's gone from, in my opinion, just this really intelligent, quiet, presenter with a laptop that just wanted to share information to a full-blown public speaker. And so he just did a great job of ending day one for us. And then day two, we brought in another social engineering expert, Jessica Clark. It's the first time ever presenting. She's known quite well in the DEF CON community. And she just, I think, she had a great presentation, but I couldn't tell if half the people were extremely scared to turn on their cell phones and change their password, and the other half was like, "Oh, it's great information." And then Glenn Cathy followed her. We had Aaron Lentz as a keynote. He did a phenomenal job, and we just, in terms of solid presentations from the main stage, it was just wonderful. And our breakout presentations, those definitely exceeded expectations. And all in all, it was just a very, very successful conference with more information shared than we've ever had before. I think we had something like 44 speakers at this conference, so it was quite large.
Gotcha. Approximately how many attendees usually go?
We had we've grown every year. This was slightly smaller than our conference in Austin. I think we had 30 less people, but we had a little under 800. Nice. So in Austin, we had right at 800. So that's been the sweet spot for us the last two shows. And next up, we'll be in Atlanta. Hopefully, it continues to grow from there. But I'm quite pleased with the numbers. We, of course, worry about if it gets too large, that we'll still have the community feel. And so we've just grown so many different initiatives that we have at the conference, from our welcome wagons, which is kind of like the, welcoming committee that we have there, to a pre-conference workouts. We just really tried to amp up our efforts to make sure everyone feels that it's a small conference, although it's growing in numbers.
Let's go back to tools for a minute. I'm assuming Dean talked about a lot of tools out there, but what are recruiters talking about these days as far as what they're using? Write off some names for me. Tell me about what they're talking about out there as far as what they use on a day-to-day basis to find talent.
Right. Well, obviously, you opened the show talking about HireTool, and I think people still don't realize that HireTool is a new product. They've only been around for a year and a half. Yeah. So, in terms of what are people using, I hear a lot about HireTool, and their competitors, right? Seek Out is another one that's quickly growing. What I learned at Sourcecon was a lot of recruiters use both HireTool and Seek Out. They kind of alternate between the two, because one will show, a certain group of names and information, and then the other one will kind of fill in the blank, and vice versa. Mm-hmm. So a lot of sourcers and recruiters, we're intermingling those two. Hiring Solved, they're still killing it. The Profit, product, obviously, that's great. We've had a couple of new tools, that really left a lot of good impressions. Deep Sense is one. Who Knows is
Deep
another.
Sense?
Deep Sense, yes.
What does that do?
It's another one of those tools that will generate names and competitive intelligence information online. Yep. And so really taps into your network, and it's not going to be like, hey, here's your email, but it's going to not only come up with like people, but also it's going to show the like a little bit more analytics behind it. So kind of like a Goodwin Labs, but a little bit more in depth on the sourcing front.
You've got these tools now, like thinking of, they do the work for you, like I guess Hires will do some of that. There's a tool called Gloat, which I just heard about recently. And they're essentially becoming these sort of mini recruiter assistants, right? Where you plug in some data, some job titles, whatever, and they send you resumes all day, basically. I mean, is that where we're headed?
I think so. These tools just do an absolutely wonderful job of finding information for us at an accelerated speed. I don't think we're even close to replacing recruiters and sourcers just yet. Yeah. Because I still think we can do our jobs a little bit better where we need to shine. It's I think long gone are the days of building lists of names. I really think that's slowly going away. That doesn't mean sourcing is going away. Yeah. It just means that we have, tools to help us build these lists a lot faster. So we can concentrate our time in other avenues like marketing, for example, or candidate experience, scheduling, et cetera. And I know there's tools that can do all that stuff for you too, but I really think a sourcer is best utilized not necessarily in the information that they can find, but it's the data that can be presented to them. And that's what I think a machine is just not there to replace just yet. Because I think just about every recruiter and sourcer have loved the automation tools that have been available to us. And of course, we want more. So I've been really impressed with the market. I've been really impressed with a lot of these resources that are available to us. And, I'm just excited to see what else is going to come and, of course, how they can improve.
Well, speaking of that, Glenn, Kathy talked about the human element of sourcing candidates. So I want to dive into that a little bit if we could. It's so easy to find a person these days with these tools, but the trick is really how to engage them and get them to reply back to you, right? So just kind of talk about that a bit, summarize what the challenge is there and how a recruiter can actually do that.
Glenn's presentation was by far one of the Sourcecon favorites. It always is. His information is just so good, and his, way of thinking is just so above what we're used to, right? It's like we all want a piece of Glenn, and I really like that how he focused his presentation. So of course he did a lot of talk about social engineering and how it can be used and stuff like that. But really he hit the message on what to do with the candidate, and that's when I think resonated so well with the audience. So first off is making sure that you have a good first impression, right? Establishing good rapport and really appealing to the emotions of a candidate. This was like a small piece of his presentation, but one of my favorite things he said was when he was talking about how we should not be so generic in our emails and how we should cut out saying things. And one of the things he said was we should eliminate the words, we have this amazing opportunity for you at our company. And what he meant by that was, it's, how do you know it's an amazing opportunity, right? Wouldn't the person be the amazing part of this opportunity? And wouldn't you want to appeal to that? Like, kind of like you're an amazing person and we have a job for you. So kind of like, playing on words a little bit more, but trying to, again, appeal to those emotions when you're contacting a candidate. He talks a lot about being likable, right? Having fun, being enjoyable. He gave the example of Southwest Airlines, for example, how when you fly, with Southwest Airlines, flight attendants are always making it fun and enjoyable. And, they're just really doing little things to make your flight that much more fun, because traveling really isn't that awesome. So that was one of the examples he said, which can be related to us as recruiters, right? Because of course, just like a flight, everyone gets these generic templated messages all the time. Well, what if you're stood out a little bit? And what if you appeal to those emotions, make the candidate laugh a little bit, make them smile, which has been a recurring theme at Sourcecon to do this. But it was more saying use, again, their emotions and bring out the empathy when you speak to these candidates as in just kind of doing as something generic. And so that's what really stood out to them, or stood out to me when he was presenting, was, again, appealing to that emotion, being more likable, and really trying to build that rapport with the candidate.
Gotcha. Shannon, is with all these new tools, is bullying dead? I mean, are people still doing that freehand?
Oh, yeah. Well, okay. Well, bullying is not dead, obviously. I don't think people realize this, but actually George Bull was his idea in looking at ways that you can, almost automate the process, right? That kind of led to where we are right now with, machine learning and AI. And so, even he saw that his demise someday.
Yep.
But no, I don't think it's dead. I think it's an important foundation that we should all learn. And I always give this example, right? It's like using a calculator. Last night, I was actually, with my niece, and she was with a tutor, and they were doing math, and they were doing like little mathematical equations, right? I think it was like 2 divided by -2.
Mm-hmm. And
I did it in my head, but then I double checked myself on the calculator because I was like, okay, wait, I still can do simple math, right? And that kind of reminds me of bullying. It's the same thing. You still have to have the foundation. You still have to have the concepts before you can pick up the calculator. What we have now is really advanced calculators. So I still see some recruiters doing it by hand. I think it's the way of choice, but you don't see that as often as we had in the past, when that was our only option to locate talent off the web or within searches. So, for example, HireTool, let's take HireTool, right? Mm-hmm. HireTool can build Boolean strings for you, and they do a great job at it. They're one of my favorite automated Boolean builder sites. If I had the same exact position as any other recruiter that's out there, my competitors, et cetera, if I was working at an agency or something like that, and I went and put in all my information to HireTool and had them build a string for me or automate my search, I'm going to be running the exact same search and coming across the exact same people as everyone else. And this actually will go back to what Glenn has said at Sourcecon before, and what he said at the last same Sourcecon, right? That's not going to really come up with any unique or new talent. So right. I need to use what I know about search in the process of, I think it's a strategic exclusion, as he said before, to better find talent and to take what these automated tools, run for me and add my own knowledge to it. And that's when I think we become really good sourcers, right? Yep. So to this day, I will do something like I'll build a string in HireTool, right? And then I'll just add my own knowledge to it, my own wisdom, and what kind of characteristics I would want to see or skills within a candidate. So I'm not running the exact same search over and over again that people are, because I want to find different candidates. Yeah. And that's what I think sourcers really need to realize. They do have to know how to do this stuff, because you still have to make these strings unique. You still have to have some human element in sourcing.
Yeah, it's the tools still give you the actual syntax. You can actually copy that into Google or something if you want to. Is that correct?
Yeah, you copy it. Well, HireTool, Social Talent has a tool, their Source Hub, stuff like that you just click a button, it's going to automatically just run the string for you in Google. It's that fast nowadays.
Yeah. You probably heard a lot of sourcing stories over the years. Tell me 1 or 2 stories from either you or someone you know that got creative in finding someone that they eventually hired. What comes to mind?
Ooh. Oh, man. Geez. So I think, I'll give you mine from... This was maybe 8 or 9 years ago.
Okay.
Back when I was a call center recruiter, the economy went down, working for T-Mobile at the time, and all the positions went on hold. And recruiters were starting to get eliminated. And I knew I really had to do something to prove my worth as a recruiter, right? Mm-hmm. And so I decided to better use data. But we didn't have any automated data systems or anything like that, especially for a call center recruiter, right? You're only limited to what corporate has given you. And I'm sitting in Nashville at a 1,500 seat call center, and they're off in Bellevue, Washington, I believe. So I was like, okay, well, let me take a look. And I took our top, I think, 10% of the call center, the top performers, because we did measure that. That's data I had access to. And I decided, okay, well, let me measure this. And we had an access database. And I was like, I can just input all this information, right? 150 names. I have a ton of time to do all this, and I can basically find some correlations. And so I took all their resumes, I took all the information when we hired them, where they were at now, and I entered it. And I noticed some pretty consistent trends that I thought we should start looking for when we brought on new talent. Well, we're getting, although we're not hiring, we're getting a ton of applications on a daily basis because so many people are out of work. So I decided, okay, well, let's take the data we have, let's run it in the systems, and let's try to find people. And so I had a scheduler that helped me do that, right? So we kind of combed the database. And the second piece we did was we took that top 10% and I showed them social recruiting concepts, which, 8-9 years ago, this was brand new, right?
Yeah.
So I was one of the first, actually, T-Mobile Careers and T-Mobile Jobs, Facebook, and Twitter pages that eventually I had to delete and give access to corporate so they can create their robust one with millions of followers, right? And I basically showed these top 10 performers, like, hey, this is how you can advertise to your network. This is how you can post something on Facebook for me. This is how you can do something in Twitter. Prior to this hiring freeze, by the way, we had a $500 referral fee for any call center representative that was hired. Okay. So you're making $10 an hour. You can refer someone and get $500. It's a huge amount of money. So we changed that up, and I was like, well, I don't have $500 anymore, so I'm going to give you a piece of Halloween candy. Like a tiny piece of candy I went to the store and bought, right? And, out of my own money, I think it cost me $3. And so I showed them how they can update their Facebook pages and their Twitter pages. And I said, all right, when someone shows any interest, if someone likes it, if someone, reaches out to you, have a phone conversation with them, come by my desk, right? And I sat in HR, like, stop by my desk, give me their name and a phone number. That's all I need. Right? Because I already know what pre-screening questions to ask. I already know what to look for based on the data I had run. That's all I wanted. So every day, I would probably get, I would say, between 15 and 25 names a day. Some, people would come in. And again, I think the number was high, first off, because, we're using friends of friends, people who come from the same make and model, which is exactly the type of person I wanted. And also, people were needing jobs at the time. And I had one that was about to open. So I would pre-phone screen about 15 to 25 people a day. And instead of giving them $500, they got a piece of candy. That was it. And when we opened the position, we had to fill, I think it was something like 90 positions the first month, right? All high volume call center reps. And then it was like 120, then 150. I think it grew in class size by like 30. It was just a huge amount of number to make up for the 6 months attrition that we had that occurred in the call center. And it was so easy for us to do that because we had people on hold. We had built rapport with them. We had known them well. They were, all referrals. I think by combing the database, we maybe came up with a few names. Mostly actually were end up being leaders for us. But to me, that was, the most creative thing I had done because it was very easy sourcing, right? I just utilized what I had in front of me. It cost me $3, like I said, to get the candy. And I mostly phone screened the whole time and let, people bring in the referrals. And it was a great way that proved to be very successful for us at the time, especially for high volume entry level recruiting, right? I wasn't sitting there, combing the interwebs and, doing bullying or LinkedIn or anything like that. I was just utilizing my resources. And to me, that adds an extra level of creativity that I think most people don't tap into, right? Like your applicant tracking system,
you took employee referrals, but you boosted it, you leveraged it by using your employees' social media accounts, which is doubly more effective. So that was pretty. Well,
creative. They weren't the employee social media account; they were mine at the time.
Oh, yours.
And then, this was before you had. Like a T-Mobile Careers, for example, right? That didn't even exist back then. So I had to I created them.
So they were like
conferences existed about branding.
Yeah.
I just went and created one, and then got the email from marketing maybe 9 months later, like you're in violation of using our name. we want to use it, and everything. I was like, oh sure, I don't care. And now it has a ton of followers.
You went rogue.
I went rogue, yeah. This was before when it was employer branding was even a term.
I like employees to go rogue. I've done that myself.
Be creative, go rogue.
Exactly. Good story. I spoke to a recruiter once who struck up a conversation with his waitress, who he was impressed by, and he ended up bringing her in for an interview or something like that.
Oh, nice.
You never know where a candidate will come from, so always be on the alert.
Yeah, I would say as I got older and advanced in recruiting as I have over the years, I'm always amazed how many of my friends from growing up parents I end up staffing and placing different places. Yeah. That has always kind of baffled me. It's like, oh, is Shannon, that obnoxious little kid that would spend the night and, you know, eat nonstop throughout the evening, you know, is now getting me a job. You know, so it's like kind of like the circle of life. You know, that's always been something that's been really rewarding. It's like, I can help out my friends' parents.
Nice. All right, a few more questions for you, Shannon. We'll talk with Shannon Pritchett from Sourcecon.com. Shannon, how should vendors approach recruiters about pitching their products? I do talk to a lot of vendors in my consulting travels, and I think a lot of them are doing it wrong. But what do you say?
I'm all for, you know, people pushing their products. I do agree a lot of them do it in a wrong way. But, you know, that's actually something we're trying to do at Sourcecon is better connect the vendors to the attendees, community members, et cetera, because we have so many people that come up to us on a daily basis. What tools should I use? Hey, what ATS do you recommend? Right? What job board can do this? We get a lot of those questions. And then to your point, your question, we get the vendors, hey, can you do this for us? Can you do that? And I feel like there's nothing in the middle. I think one of the first things you can do is establish a community within yourself. You know, we've seen HireTool do that. Avature does a pretty good job with establishing a community as well. But I don't think people realize that, you know, employees are going to be firm users and advocates of your product. And those are also going to be your biggest promoters. I would cut the sales budget down a little bit, to be honest. Yeah. And I would concentrate more on events. You know, you hear about industry events all the time. You know, every big tech company has them, but, you know, they're expensive to attend, right? They're like $1,500 to attend plus the flight and everything. Okay, you're already spending hundreds of thousands, if not thousands a year. Okay, great. I'm going to spend $4,000 or $5,000 just so I can listen to a couple people talk that I can hear at, I don't know, Sourcecon. You know, to me, that's also doing it wrong, right? You know, have a free event. You know, get a couple good speakers together and just invest your money into one of the many events that go on that do it right and have, you know, a big party there or do something for the people within your group. I think sourcers especially really like to be promoters of products and services because first off, we're not writing the check. And second, if we like a product, we want other people to know about it, right?
Yeah, I've never seen a group of like HR people, you know, in an HR space, generally speaking, talk more about their products than like the sourcers do. I find that interesting.
Yeah. You know, because it helps us. You know, and you're right. You don't see a lot of Workday HRS.
Yeah, exactly. You don't see people touting their ATS or other products. But yeah, and I think you're spot on about the events though too. I think, just go to more events. I mean, you don't have to. You know, there's a big push now with a lot of vendors. They're having their own events. You know, the ETS vendors. I'm going to Greenhouse in a few weeks in New York City. Smart Recruiters just had theirs. You know, Lever has their own conference, so they can. You know, that's where that's great lead generation for them. And if I were an HR tech vendor, I would basically make it a point to get to know the community first, and you know, build your sales off of that. Because I think it's all about you know, getting to know the community and humanizing yourself in front of them, because that's important.
Exactly. And, you know, you look at things like, and I think those events are very important for these companies to do. I'll take, for example, LinkedIn Talent Connect. I got to attend for the first time whenever it was last fall. And I saw the tremendous lead gen and sales opportunity for the LinkedIn staff there. And there's a line of people just begging to go to that. You know, you got 5,000 people. It's by far one of the bigger industry events, you know, within recruitment. And there's really no presentations, but there's not much to actually talk about recruiting, sourcing, finding candidates, do anything like that. It's a giant entertainment conference, and it's really
is that what it is? I've never been to it.
You know what I mean? Yeah, it's I mean, famous authors and actors and tech industry leaders, and you know, they'll throw a couple industry names at the end of the conference or sprinkle them throughout, you know, but usually those get overlooked because you're going to, you know, hear like some famous author speak instead. But but you know, it's like you don't go to Talent Connect to learn something new. You go to have fun. And I guarantee you all 5,000 people that leave there either are going to spend more money on LinkedIn next year or are going to be like drinking the LinkedIn Kool-Aid, as we call it, because those events are just so successful. And I'm like, man,
Nice.
They know how. They do it right.
Yeah, awesome.
This is a very good event.
All right, wrapping this up here. What piece of advice would you give to like a new college grad who wants to go into recruiting or sourcing today? What one thing would you tell them to do?
Well, first off, I recommend recruiting and sourcing for every college grad. First, I think it's
a good life skill.
Everyone should be a recruiter. It's a good life skill, right? You learn how to interview, you learn how to research, you learn how to engage with people, you learn how to communicate. Not only that, you get a whole, basically, preview of every single job that's out there. And I think it's so when people are confused, I'm always like, hey, go work for an agency, become a recruiter. You get paid a ton of money and you get to really see what else is out there while learning a bunch of skills in the beginning. But I wish there was something within colleges that could better sell or advertise our profession to many people, because it's obviously so phenomenal. I mean, Chris, you and I have been doing this for longer than we want to admit publicly, but my biggest advice for them would be, of course, don't be afraid to fail, and do fail. I was the worst recruiter when I first started. I was horrible. I thought a Java developer, right, in the IT field, I thought that was really someone who makes coffee at Starbucks. I would spam candidates. I was such a bad spammer. I had this thing where I could find a resume, upload it to our ATS, send them an email, and leave a voicemail for them. And something like, I think my record was like, I could do that in 30 seconds, right? So this is obviously dating me back to the days when we had call sheets. Right? I wasn't really reviewing the resume very much back then. I was spamming, it was just like, I thought I was doing the numbers game, and I just went in there with zero training, not knowing anything. I could barely pronounce Boolean. It was like more like the soup, like, a bouillon base. I couldn't pronounce half the positions I was looking for. I was a terrible researcher. And through just me just doing it the wrong way and realizing, wow, there's so much more better I could be doing to serve the candidates and my clients, that's what made me eventually become a really good sourcer, and then finally a really good recruiter. So I would just encourage them to fail and try new things, because you never know what's going to work for you. But it's a great profession. I hope we get more people to join the ranks.
Nice, good advice. So you got Sourcecon Budapest coming up. You're venturing farther out of your comfort zone there. Tell us about that. When is it? What's in store for it?
Super excited. So Sourcecon Budapest is going to be June 12th and 13th, 2018. So this summer, I think, what are we, like 10 weeks away? Less than that. It's going to be our first time entering the European market. We're super excited. Basically, we're coming over to establish that community I've been talking about. Mm-hmm. There's not a big sourcing community yet in Europe, and there's a lot of talent in Europe, probably just as much as we have in the U.S. And so, we're starting to see more and more people come to Sourcecon from Europe, and so that told us, like, oh my gosh, let's get this going, right? Let's establish that community with certain rules and regulations like GDPR and all those various different countries. There's so much that I can learn and we can learn from what they're doing, and they can learn from one another. So we're super excited. The community is going to be the theme of the conference. We have a lot of Sourcecon and sourcing legends that are going to be speaking and keynoting. We have Katrina Collier. We have Jan Tigza. We have Shane McCusker, Balazs Farkazy, Kirsten Wagner, Chris Long from Australia. We have just an amazing group of people that are going to be there, and super excited for our first venture out to Europe.
Awesome. We'll look forward to that. Do you have a promo code or anything you want to give out to listeners? Or?
Yeah, we have a 10% promo code. It's SC Familia. So SC for Sourcecon Familia. And also there's a couple floating around on the web too. So you can use your sourcing skills to find some discounts that might be larger than 10%. So okay. I'll let your audience source those. All right. You said SC. We wouldn't be Sourcecon without it, right?
Exactly, yeah. You said SC Familia?
SC Familia.
Okay, I gotcha. Awesome. Well, Shannon, I appreciate the chat today. A lot of good stuff. Looking forward to my next Sourcecon whenever I get there. And have a great show out in Budapest. Sounds like a great great place to have an event, first of all. And I think what you guys are doing are good things for the community overall, and keep up the good work. So thanks very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate your time, and we hope to see you in Atlanta.
All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the RecTech Podcast. Thanks again to our sponsor. Remember to check out HireTool and also my new training shows at rectechlive.com. You can subscribe to the show via iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, and Stitcher Radio. Hey, if you like the show, please leave a review on your channel of choice. Love to see your feedback or show suggestions. Mention us on social media with the hashtag RecTech. I'm always on the hunt for recruiters willing to come on and talk about their recruiting technology, so just email me, chris@rectechmedia.com. Thanks for listening, and remember, always be recruiting.
Another episode of RecTech is in the books. Follow Chris on Twitter @ChrisRussell or visit rectechmedia.com, where you can find the audio and links for this show on our blog. RecTech Media helps both HR tech firms and employers to get more clients or candidates through our consulting practice and online tools. So be sure to check out our sites like recruiting headlines, job fairing, and more to stay up to date on what's happening in recruiting. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you soon on the next episode of RecTech, the Recruiting Technology Podcast.